Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for episode number 47, which we're going to talk about a recommended YouTube video I saw last night that got me all fired up. It was all about Ryan Dunn's ghost, and then it actually ran into a video about two good friends of mine that are no longer with us, Marc and Debbie Constantinos. Let's start with Ryan Dunn. Well, first off, if you don't know who Ryan Dunn is, Ryan Dunn was a member of CKY. He was Bam Margera's best friend. Later became a member of Jackass and the multiple Bam Margera spin-off shows. Believe it or not, I met Ryan Dunn down in a bar in South Padre Island. He was down there promoting one of the shows that he was on at that time. And nice enough guy for what it's worth. He was a very nice guy. But about a year after I met him is actually when he passed away. He, unfortunately, was drinking and partying and hopped in his car, lost control going well over 100 miles an hour, and he died. Now, Bam Margera claims that when Ryan Dunn died, that Bam, who had no idea that Ryan was even going home at that time, Bam claimed that he had a freakout session in his car and started knocking out windows and ripping out the car stereo, and he didn't even know why. And then it brought about this big discussion as to whether or not there was visitation before Ryan Dunn left this plane, I guess you could say. I do believe that happens as far as visitation goes. It's just been reported since the dawn of time where someone passes away and they visit people at the time of their passing. Young children often report this, where a child will wake up and go tell their parent, you need to call this member of the family, or what's going on with this person at really weird hours of the night, and you come to find out that they passed away. So I'm not really doubting that Bam Margera could have had some form of visitation. But this story was about how this guy who was a fan, once he heard of Ryan Dunn's accident, this guy hopped in his car, just some guy who's a fan of Jackass, hopped in his car and he went down to the site of the crash and he scooped up a bunch of fragments of the car. And he went home and he put the fragments in a shoebox and put it under his bed. Well, 6 months later, he's claiming that weird things are happening in his house and that his bed is shaking, and he puts the stuff on eBay to sell it. Craigslist, actually, sorry. He puts it on Craigslist. And he tries to sell all of it, I think, for $300 or something like that. And he lists in the ad, I'm just tired of all the weird stuff happening since I got this. I just want to get rid of this stuff. I think these items are cursed. And that brought up a bigger conversation that I wanted to have. The thought that an item can be haunted. And I know there's a show called The Haunted Collector with John Zaffis out there that further propagates this idea. And before I share my thoughts on this, I know Johnny. I've known Johnny for years. And Johnny's always been a nice guy to me. Any of my feelings that go against what he does, it's not meant as an attack. I'm just being honest as to how I feel, which by that precursor, you could probably guess that I don't believe in that. The idea that a spirit can take over a thing, an inanimate object, it doesn't make any sense to me. I've never seen it happen, but what I do believe is in the power of the mind. If you believe that that thing is haunted, then you're going to start experiencing things. At Chillingham Castle, there is this big shelf with all these items that people have taken from Chillingham Castle and then later returned with letters because they got home and they believe weird things started happening in their house, so they mailed these things back. And now every person that comes to the castle sees this, and now they think that's what's going to happen if they take something. And of course, that's now what happens. And with the show, The Haunted Collector, that show works under the premise that every haunting is a case where there is a haunted item in which John will point that item out and take it home with him, which we used to always laugh and go, man, I'd be pointing at the Porsche every time. I'd be like, yep, that sports car, that thing's haunted. I got to take that home. But no, in all seriousness, I know part of the idea with a lot of these paranormal shows is they want to come up with new ideas. They want to come up with fresh ideas and different approaches to the paranormal. And, John has a museum. And John is the, I believe, grandson of Lorraine. And of course, Lorraine has a museum. And it kind of goes back to that. That's what I would ask all you guys. If there was really the chance of people becoming possessed through items, or dolls or things like that, do you think Lorraine would be opening up all of those items to the public and ushering man, woman, child through there and putting all those people at risk? Not a chance. Not a chance. But the thing is, if someone believes it, that's the thing. It's the same thing like when there's a haunted house and, like Chip Coffey's walking through and say that the tenants are Catholic. If they, have a medallion of St. Michael and they say St. Michael's prayer, it's going to have an effect if they believe that it does. Because I truly believe the mind is that powerful. If you watch my documentary, A Blood Red Sky, it clearly demonstrates this. 99% of what people experience at haunted locations, most of it, they're creating themselves. Most of it. That's how powerful the mind is. And I know that sounds like, oh, wait a minute, well, this is some new agey stuff. The mind is that powerful. No, we've seen this in science. What is the placebo effect? We've all heard of this, right? The placebo effect. It's when you give somebody medication and you tell them that it's a specific type of medication and it will have a specific effect, and people take it and they start to have those effects, even though they're sugar tablets. The placebo effect. This happens all the time. It's been proven to be effective, and that's nothing more than the power of the mind. During the MK Ultra test, they wanted to see how powerful the mind was when you introduced suggestion, and they would hold keg parties where they would fill up 2 kegs with non-alcoholic beer, and they would invite people in to party and give them cups, and inside an hour, not only would everybody in the room be acting buzzed and drunk, they would be showing physical signs of being drunk, yet there was no alcohol in their body. That's what I'm saying about all of these types of items and things like that. If you believe that this item is causing you to have paranormal activity, then that item is, but only because you believe it is. So really it's about you. If you really think about energy in general, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. So if there's some kind of spiritual energy that we all maintain, how could it go sit in a rock? Or a piece of wood or whatever, it doesn't make any sense. If there is some kind of spirit or anything like that that has an affinity for something in the house and doesn't want it moved or doesn't want, any kind of new construction done to a home, I could see how that can obviously create some paranormal activity. But now we're talking about, whatever it is that a ghost is, whether it's an interdimensional being or the same thing as a person without a body. What we're talking about at that point is something being protective over an item. That doesn't mean the item itself, like car parts, would be possessed. You know, what I think is this guy just wanted to sell this stuff. He went and grabbed it because he knew it would be valuable one day. Enough time had passed. He needed some money, so he said, "Oh yeah, it's Ryan Dunn's car parts are making my bedroom haunted." I can't imagine if there is a ghost of Ryan Dunn that he is hanging out at this guy's place who has his car parts and he's trying to mess with them. I don't know. I would hope in the afterlife he would have something more important to do. What is wrong with people? Like, I wonder if it ever crossed this guy's mind that Ryan Dunn has a family. He has people that love him and care about him. I mean, it's freaking disturbing. I don't believe that items can become possessed or haunted. Like I said, I'm not attacking John's show. If you guys enjoy The Haunted Collector, please enjoy it. Please watch it. I don't buy into it in any capacity. I don't. And again, even if people go, what about cursed objects? Well, that comes back to, do you believe in the curse? In order for a curse to work on you, you have to believe in the curse. If you don't, then it doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. So, but this video rolled into the next segment, which really bummed me out as much as it pissed me off. It was about Marc and Deb Constantino, who were very good friends of mine. If you don't know the story of Marc and Deb Constantino, they were an EVP specialist duo. They loved EVP. The last time I saw them physically, we actually investigated Alcatraz together, which was, God, it was such a good time. Such a good time. But Marc and Deb have been on all kinds of television shows. They were on Paranormal State. I believe they were on Ghost Adventures and a couple others. And they were from Jersey. And both of them just had huge personalities. And they had a very, very fiery relationship. And they would argue with each other at the drop of the hat in front of anybody, which most of the time was very comical and entertaining, because they would kind of eventually end up laughing and kind of playing it off. But they were fiery, for sure. And unfortunately, a crazy series of events went down, and you guys could Google it and read all of it. It's just hard for me to recount all of it because, again, it hurts, because they're both very good friends of mine. But Marc ended up killing Deb and himself. He shot her and then committed suicide. And almost immediately, I started hearing people going, "Oh, it was the EVP work. It was the EVP work. Marc got possessed. And that's why this happened." And while it is true that they did EVP work all the time, they did it in their home, they did it around the clock. Debbie was very, very fascinated with EVP work on dolls. She believed that dolls would capture the spirits of people. And although I do believe they were, how do you say this? They spent a little too much time down the rabbit hole, I guess. If you knew them the way I knew them, and I knew them very well, I don't think any of that stuff had to do with how they both died. I don't think any of it did. You have to understand, they were a couple that were together from a very, very young time period in their life. And they had problems, in their marriage. They had problems, and they had them for years, but there was a passionate love between them two that kept them together. And it was a love hard, fight hard relationship. And so many people were so quick to vilify Mark. And of course, anytime anybody hurts anybody and takes a life, yeah, of course you go, that version of that person, at least how I saw it, that version of that person is the worst version of them, obviously. But that was so hard for me to wrap my mind around because I genuinely liked Mark. And I genuinely liked Debbie. And I've never laughed more with any other group that I've ever investigated with than I've been with them. Laura, loved them both. I mean, they were so much fun to investigate with, to hang out with. They were so genuine. And yeah, they fought like cats and dogs. And you could almost see it happens a lot. It happens a lot in relationships where a relationship starts out so passionate, and it's just like a hurricane. And you love somebody so much. And you love this image and this vision of what you can be one day. And then things just don't ever pan out that way. And then you're in love with what you were, and you're in love with the dream of what you should be. But you're living with the fact that it didn't turn out that way. And that's hard. And then they had all these natural stresses. And I can tell you this, if the paranormal added to anything that caused this, terrible ending to both of them, it's the fact that they were both trying to make a living doing it. I mean, the paranormal just pays nothing. I mean, especially if you're not a contractual member. If you're just like, hey, come do this guest spot. I mean, you're getting paid $100 to $500 maybe to go out and film for a day, and that's kind of what they did. And then they did a bunch of events. And they were trying to make a living being paranormal investigators. And it's just, the money isn't there. And if you knew their relationship and you knew how volatile it was and you knew how deep their history went and how much they had been through and how many ups and downs they had been through, and now you throw incredible financial stress on top of it, just all of those things, they're just not conducive for a happy marriage. And it appeared as though Debbie was trying to move on towards the end and didn't want to be a part of that relationship anymore. And I don't think it was something Mark could handle. But having said that, there's so many details to it. Even knowing bits and pieces of it, I couldn't even pretend to know all of it. But my point in all this is, no, I do not think Debbie and Mark being EVP specialists had anything to do with what went down with them. And that's what this video is suggesting, is that somehow through her EVP work with the dolls, Mark became possessed because he reviewed all the audio and the clips and he listened to it. And once he was possessed, then he just, took over and became this crazy, person that just wanted to murder everybody. And it's just not, that's, the problem with that is it takes away from the real issues, and it's just so easy to go, oh, well, a spirit overtook him. I mean, that's just so easy to say that, and it's so incredibly unlikely when you know the facts of the situation. I don't think for 1 second that anybody was possessed over there. It doesn't even make sense, because if that were true, this whole idea that if you go investigating all the time and you have a higher likelihood of being possessed. I've been to multiple cases of possession, and nobody at that house was a paranormal investigator. In all the cases that we went to on Paranormal State, I can't remember a single house that we went to that was haunted where the people that were living there were paranormal investigators. Evil's not waiting around going, well, I guess if somebody comes through this door and if they investigate here, then we'll take them over. There's definitely good in the world. There's definitely evil in the world. And evil's aggressive. It's not waiting for you to get curious. I just bring this up because I hate videos like this. Hate videos that they take a real tragedy like a Ryan Dunn or like a Marc and Debbie, and they try to make it something paranormal because it makes for a great legend and it makes for great lore, but they completely ignore the facts of the situation. They completely ignore the facts of the situation. And I can tell you right now, if somebody was able to become possessed, if they were able to become possessed, and I think there's a lot of things that have to happen in order for possession to happen. It's going to start when it starts, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult or whether you're an investigator or not, evil is ever present. And you got to think about that. You got to remember that. And what I've seen in my experiences, in possession cases, usually it starts with some form of abuse as a child. Usually that's kind of where the tear is, the opening, the wound. Fucking wound, man. God. There's no greater evil than an evil done to a child, because it rips people open for their whole life. There's people that are 70 years old that still can't get over what happened to them when they were a kid, and they shouldn't, because it was horrible. So if Mark was going to become possessed, it wasn't going to be because he went EVP hunting. I think there are cases in life where that's possible, where people can become possessed and do obviously very crazy things. But then there's also cases in the world where life stresses and the realities of life are just too much for people to handle. And more often than not, that's the case. I just don't want people to dismiss the harsh realities of what they went through and paint it with some Hollywood brush that makes for a great script, when it was a horrible, horrible situation, and Marc and Deb lost their lives for reasons that I pray that you and I will never fully understand. Thank you guys for listening to episode 47 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. Much love to you guys. I'll be back tomorrow with more. All the best.